Welcome to the Ask JT podcast, where we simplify tax, finance, and business decisions for UK business owners. I'm Justin Turner, an accountant, business owner, and author. I'm going to share practical advice and help you run your business more efficiently and keep more of what you earn. Hi everyone, I'm Justin Turner. I'm joined today by Dave Rogers. We're going to have a conversation about resilience in entrepreneurship. I think it's a very difficult economic environment out there for running a business. So I'm really keen to sort of hear from Dave and hear from some of the ideas and the clients that he's worked with. But just to kick us off, Dave, do you want to give us a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, so I'm Dave Rogers. And for the last 30 years, I've been helping businesses and their leaders understand the commercial impact of their decisions to keep them ahead of the game and help them innovate and grow their business continually and get sustained success. It's great to be with you again today, Justin.
I want to kind of kick off the conversation today, and it's a really, really hot topic. National living wage increases, inflation, and rising utility costs. And just to kind of set the scene in my own business, what I always try and do is put the national living wage increase into all of the staff wages. Otherwise, they find that the national living wage people in the economy are starting to catch up the higher paid people, and it puts the business under a lot of pressure. We're very scientific about our price rises, and we have a spreadsheet, and we carefully consider, we track our time. And I've put through that 9.8% increase that we've just experienced into the price rises, and we've achieved that. Yet I look at my profitability and I look at the business and see that we're 17% up on turnover, so we've successfully grown, but we're 14% down on profit. I think it's those other things. It's not just living wage. It's been inflationary pressure. Everyone's put their prices up. Our utility costs are through the roof. Is it just me? Are you seeing this with your clients?
So there's nothing like leaping in with such a hot topic, Justin, as all of the things you've just discussed. For me, all of my clients are seeing it. I'm seeing it in my business. I've got one client which is a family-owned equestrian centre who are built on providing equine opportunities for their local area, and they've probably had five figures added to their employment bill overnight. And these are not this is not a huge income business, that then coupled with the utilities that they need to make sure that the horses are looked after on, in the stables, that the staff are being, looked after, coupled with all of the inflationary pressures on things like, bedding, hay, feed, all of those sorts of things. All of a sudden, it's created this real challenging environment for them. And it's the same in a number of businesses. And I think, there's been talk recently about inflation sort of slowing down, which in some respects is great. However, it still means prices are going up. They're not dropping back. So, we luckily we're not at the same heights that we were probably towards the back end of, I would have thought, of 2022, where we were in massive double digit inflationary, growth. But these things, unfortunately for everybody in business, they're not going away anytime soon. So we really need to think about how we can help businesses and how businesses can help themselves to try and manage through these challenges.
I mean, I read a quote by Warren Buffett, and he said in this quote, and I felt a lot better after I read this quote. Is said a business that can increase its prices during difficult economic times is actually a really strong business, and that's what we did. Is we effectively put a 10% price increase across the board to our clients. We, touch wood, we haven't lost anyone, and I sort of felt a little bit better because I know I'm not the only one in this situation where we've successfully grown, but we have seen a contraction in our profits. Do you think people are good at analysing the kind of the pricing structure and putting the price rises in like that?
I think it's probably mixed. I think some people are great at it. Some recognise that these costs are coming, so therefore they need to think about how to position themselves differently. I think there are a number of businesses though that actually, if you flip all of the stuff that we've just talked about from a business perspective to a personal, perspective,
Mm,
and individuals have physically got less disposable income, to spend. Actually, there's a I think some business owners will be looking there going like, okay, I'll get that my national living wage has gone up by 9.8%, but I'm not sure that my customers can cope with in some instances they might need to increase prices 10, 15, 20% because they're small businesses. They haven't got purchasing power like larger organizations have, and therefore they're trying to mitigate,
mm,
huge cost increases within their price while trying to protect their
mm.
customer base. So this is not an easy thing. And even I think some of the bigger boys and girls in the corporate world, you're seeing that they're getting it wrong, and they've got all of the resource and the time and the science and the data
Yeah,
insights to
yeah,
to be able to make more informed choices. This is you know it is unprecedented in my
mm,
in my sort of viewing from a business perspective. Or certainly during my time working in business, I think there's certainly been more difficult times in history, but in modern day, I think it's a very difficult sort of
yeah.
conundrum that people are trying to resolve.
I think one of the things I often say to clients is there's only three ways in which you can make more money. You can sell more, you can cut costs, or you can increase prices. And I think you've just summarized that, difficult economic pressure, it becomes difficult to sell more, it becomes difficult to increase prices, and inflation makes it very difficult to cut costs. I think,
Yeah,
very difficult indeed.
yeah, but I think I suppose the again just flipping what we've just discussed again slightly is that I think because we are all on a personal level experiencing price increases, I think n- not that it's palatable for people to be putting up their prices, but you know what I mean. It almost feels like well, people are almost expecting it now. They're sort of
Yes.
going, oh well, hold on a minute. If I'm seeing that you know, my butter at the local supermarket's gone up by 20p. Is it any wonder that a sandwich at my local cafe's gone up by 10
Yes.
pence or two? Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of principle. I think people are understanding of it. I just think it's just very difficult for people to both manage it on a personal and business level. So,
I think the number one thing that has helped us through this inflationary pressure and has allowed us to grow, even though we have had a contraction in the profits, is customer service. I think we invested and it costs us a lot of money to provide customer service. I think people think, oh, customer service is just a given. No, it doesn't. It costs money to provide good customer service. Do you think that that is a good solution to the inflation problem, or to protecting your business customer service?
yeah, I think it is, and it's sort of in these sort of difficult times. It's always the first thing to think about is how you're going to cut your cloth accordingly and cut back costs and not invest in certain areas. But actually, in some regards, it's actually some business successes previously in these sort of difficult times have all been because they've gone faster and harder at what they were going to do to create a better experience, and then almost sort of protecting themselves through that
Mm,
experience that their customers, and also I just like to point out that their employees are getting as well through these difficult
sure.
times because it's all of these things are sort of pieces in this jigsaw puzzle that's trying to
Mm.
create the ultimate solution to a particular business's problem, and all the jigsaw pieces are never the same shape in any business when you're trying to put that puzzle together.
I'll move the conversation on a bit. I think we've covered off inflation there. I mean, one of the ideas that I had as sort of the next theme that I wanted to discuss is about diversifying your income streams. That's something I set out to do a couple of years ago, and I had this great idea that I'd write a book. And I thought, yeah, I could write a book. I can connect it up to my business, and can't be difficult to sell a book, can it, Dave?
No, no, not at all.
As we both know, it's very difficult to sell books. And I turned up to it was Michael Heppel's Write That Book course, and was already 40,000 words into writing this book, and the first words out of Michael's mouth were, "You don't write books to sell books." I was like, "Oh my God, what have I
Uh,
done?" I think it just illustrates that, diversifying income can be incredibly difficult, especially if it's not your core knowledge or core expertise. What advice would you have for people who are looking to diversify, looking for different income streams?
yeah, I think for me, it's around finding um, the right avenue forward that still really resonates with your core passion and purpose and vision for what you want the business to achieve. So
Sure.
a great example of that for me would be, the family owned riding school that I spoke about earlier in our conversation. They have got a lovely menage in the middle of their riding school that's not used every day because they're not booked out for riding lessons all the time. So we
Mm,
started exploring how they could utilize that space where they've still got people on site looking after the
mhm,
horses, but to utilize the space to generate more income. So we started exploring. So one of their passions is about making equestrianism more accessible for their local community. So what we said was, well, okay, then. So how can we engage with local schools? How can we engage with students with
mhm.
special educational needs and create an environment that they feel like they can come down to the riding school, experience what it's like to work at the stables, ride a horse, feed the horses, all of those sort of fantastic things that you can experience while you're there.
Mm,
And we went, That's great. So how are we gonna, you know, fund that? Because it fits perfectly with the core purpose of what we want to try and achieve
sure.
as a business. But we need to, you need to find the income stream to diversify into. So, okay, so right, let's think about this. So we could become a community interest company and create an arm of the business that is allowed to apply for local grants to fund things. They
Sure.
started getting involved with the holiday activities and food program that's there for
Uh,
families that have free school meals during school time. Got funding through that. That led to them becoming a partner of the Gen 22 charity, which is looking after all of the money that was the legacy fund from the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, which is,
right.
if people couldn't tell from my accent, is I live down in the West Midlands. So all of a sudden, just focus on your core passion. I mean, a couple of conversations about what you could do differently and how to utilise your business differently opened up all of these avenues, and now it's developing into a potential charitable foundation, and
Okay.
all of those things mean that um, we're able to get money in from different organisations. They can sponsor children through the program. All of these things that just protects them from all of the things I discussed earlier around. Well, they're increasing national living wage. Well, the staff are already on site. So how can we make it where we're actually getting them to engage with the local community? It protects them from the utilities. It protects everybody from the inflationary pressures.
Mm.
And it's just a great way also in this instance to give back as well.
I suppose that's spare capacity, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
diversifying by identifying the spare capacity that you've got. That's very, very interesting to hear from that. I think it is inherently difficult to try and diversify, and I think as you as a business coach doing mentoring and things, how much do you input into these ideas? Do you find that business owners can be a bit blind to the opportunities that they're sat on?
Sometimes they can be. Sometimes they're coming to me with me trying to ask them the open questions to get them to think about it. It logically. I think there's all sorts of ways people can diversify income, but it's not always necessarily the right thing for the business. And I think for me, it's about when I'm talking to a business owner about this, it's all about okay. So have you got spare capacity, whether it be in the
Mhm.
riding schools case space? In the case of a charity that I work closely with, is it people within a team that have got spare capacity to deliver different things along the same theme? And when you start asking those sorts of questions, that then sort of opens people's minds up to going, okay, so we could do, you know, this with, this product line, or we could develop a new product line that's slightly geared more towards this sort of, people, but still keeping that core, um, sort of, um, approach to what they want to do. And for me, a great example of that is Joe Wicks, the body coach.
Yep.
So Joe became what was it, the nation's PE teacher during
Yes.
lockdown, doing free workouts. I think it was every day or every other day. Really engaging with the uh, the country and, well, the world actually, because he was doing it
Yeah, it was the world, wasn't it? Yeah.
his YouTube channel. But then that for me, from an outsider looking in, it says to me, well, okay, so he's realised that there's a real community that he's able to build here, and how can he continue to give back to that community? But
Mm,
but actually, then he's running a business at the end of the day, so he's got to find a way of sort of
yeah.
income streams and things. So guess what? He did a few partnerships with healthy food providers. He launched his app, which has got a
Yeah.
free version and a paid version for people who want to get a different experience.
Yeah.
So I think for me, he's still maintained that I want to give and he still does free videos on his YouTube channel. He's still got that I'm going to give people what they need, and it's accessible and everybody can get
Sure.
hold of it. But there's also a different experience to provide in a more, for want of a better phrase, premium sort of nature, I suppose.
Mm. My kind of next subject, I suppose, is collaborations. Can we use collaborations to cut costs? And I've got a great example of this just to kick us off. I had two clients, they're both plumbers, and they were both absolutely stowed out with work. As you can't find a plumber, can you? Because they've got so much work. But neither of them had enough capacity work, I suppose, to take on a full-time member of staff. So I connected them up and said, why don't you share a member of staff? And that's what they went off and did, and it's worked incredibly well for them, and they've been sharing this member of staff. As and when, I think it becomes a little bit complicated, but it allowed them just to make that next growth move. They wouldn't have been able to do it. I think they would have had to take a kind of, their income would have contracted because of the cost of a member of staff. But the kind of collaborations, are there any great examples that you've got of that?
Yeah, I mean, one that immediately springs to mind, and it's probably on a slightly larger scale to the one you just described. But I remember working for one of the hospitality businesses I worked for, who also, as well as having pubs and restaurants and hotels, also had a brewery business.
Mhm.
And so they were delivering beer to their pubs every day, but were driving past a number of their competitors' businesses in order
Mm.
to do that. So what they started exploring was collaborative partnerships with brewers who hadn't got the logistics infrastructure that the company I worked for had got. And so therefore they started partnering with them, and they were basically just delivering en masse into a brewery site. And then the brewery I worked for, they were then distributing it out to their pubs. And actually they were having, fuller dray lorries. They
Yeah.
were able to charge for the service. So therefore, it all automatic for everybody concerned became a much more cost-effective solution to get beer from a brewery into the hands of a customer. And it was something as simple as that.
Okay, I teach innovation for Northumbria University, and I help cohorts from the police, NHS, really look at kind of collaboration through innovation, and we talk to them about lean startup, and that's about the resources you've already got on hand that you're not necessarily using all of the time. And I love that concept. Is actually, if we to get to A to B, it would be brilliant to go in a Porsche. But actually, we haven't got one of those, and going on a bike is equally fine, and it just allows you to test the market and try ideas out without actually exposing you. I think your example is, you're already driving past, aren't you?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
why
So
not do
what else
it?
could what else can I put on my lorry to help somebody else? And
Yeah,
and it got to and it's almost it's just reminded me, actually, as you said that it then became a, well, actually we're going to help by delivering our consumables through our own logistics network, although we've got a supplier who's doing it. So rather than them, having
Yeah,
to drop off at pub A and then driving 10 miles up the road, well, actually, we can do all of that ourselves if you just deliver
sure.
into our central location. But I
Mm.
think like, just for me, like conversations like the one we're having today is a collaboration, isn't it? We've
Absolutely.
both got different experiences in
Yeah.
our business life, and I think sometimes people think a collaboration has got to be something that's a sort of formalized agreement, or do you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And actually, you can collaborate with people that you meet networking, or
Yeah.
with other local businesses and things like that.
Yeah, I think it is very interesting. Collaboration through knowledge is, networking events. People tend to go to those sorts of things, and because they want to sell, they want to
Yeah,
sell. My approach in networking events is I'm not short of work, and I'm rarely, out there to sell, basically. But in that room, there's a property solicitor, there's an HR specialist, there's a business coach. These people are experts, and I have this and people don't see it this way. I've got this 10 minutes with this person where I ask them all of these complicated questions. I've got this client with this problem. But I think those sorts of conversations actually lead to collaborations, because HR specialists suddenly who have you got to refer HR stuff to? And I'm like, I don't have anyone, and all of a sudden you start building up the sudden collaborations, and that they can be great. They don't necessarily have to be financial. I think going back to customer service is one of the things I'm always looking to do, is create good collaborations in order to support our clients with better customer service. We're not looking for financial kickbacks or anything like that. It's just part of being good at what we're doing, and having a business coach that we could say, yeah, if you're struggling, go and take some coaching, and this is who we'd recommend for that. That just enhances it, and they are just collaborations, I suppose. But
yeah,
yeah,
and I think just expanding on that point as well is I think there's also the bit around actually sometimes you need to sort of, for one of the better phrase, speculate to accumulate as well, and actually
yes,
investing a bit of money in a collaboration with an expert can save you so much money either
mm,
further down the line, or
yeah,
or or protect you in some way, shape, or form from potential,
yeah.
financial challenges that you might face as well.
Yeah, very quickly, I had a very good example of that. I had a Yorkshireman who'd come to me, and it was the father of one of the clients, and he had a capital gain on a property, and I suddenly identified that he'd lived in this property for like 10 years. And he said to me at the end, he said, "As a keen Yorkshireman, how much have I saved by paying you for this service?" I thought, what a great
Yeah,
way of putting it.
yeah,
But
and
yeah,
and and that's and
professional
yeah,
advice. Yeah,
that's and that,
yeah.
that and that's what it's about. And I think again, it's an interesting topic.
Mm. Um, I think the final point I just wanted to touch on, we're experiencing all of this kind of difficulty in the economy. Grants. What's your experience of businesses getting hold of grants to kind of, for help fund their business?
Yeah, I think grants is a really interesting area, really interesting topic to discuss, because I think from my perspective, it feels like that there's lots of grants out there. The government talk about the leveling up fund. There's business growth grants. There's chamber of commerce opportunities. There all sorts of things. But my experience is they're incredibly difficult for businesses to identify where they need to go to get them, and then b whether they actually qualify to apply for it. And then probably a third thing I'll just throw into the mix as well is there's then the sort of the what I would describe match funding. So whereas I'm going to I can get 5 grand grant, but I've got to
Yeah.
put 5 grand of my own money into it. And I think what that then makes it really difficult. People just go, I can't be bothered. Like if I've got to work, if it's not easy for me to grow my business with this financial help,
Yeah.
you know, why would I invest loads of time? And I suppose so that sort of leads on to the like, how do you then find better access and things like that? And there are professional, grant and bid writers who are probably great people to go to have a chat with about how to get better insight. There's
Mm.
all sorts of email. sort of newsletters, for want of a better phrase, that you can probably sign up locally. Certainly for me down in the West Midlands, there's various things that the West Midlands Combined Authority do. There's the local chambers of commerce. There's the organisations that run the business growth hubs for the
Sure.
local councils and things like that. And those are the places I would recommend people go to
Good.
first to try and work out what there is and is it applicable.
Yeah.
And I think other thing I just throw into the mix as well is as we discussed sort of off air a little bit, is that it's also different on a regional basis. So just because there's a creative grant in the West Midlands to develop websites with organisations, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be available in the Northeast where you're based,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Interesting. I think one of the interesting places I've seen, are they grants? Yeah, maybe they are. But the apprenticeship scheme, some of the members
Yes,
of
yeah.
staff that we've taken on have been quite young, and we've had £1,000 grant from taking those people on. I think. Yes, it is funded. The apprenticeship scheme is people are getting qualifications. So people come into my organisation and they start on an AAT qualification, the Association of Accounting Technicians. And, without any student debt, these people are getting level 4 qualifications, and then they can take it on, and we then push them through into the chartership route. And they're becoming chartered accountants, and they have no student debt at the end. We make, I think, something like a 10% contribution into it. Yeah, we have to give them day release, while there's also breaks for employers' national insurance as well. So I think it's one of the best incentives out there at the moment.
Yeah, and I think just adding on that, there's something also which I don't know whether you're aware of, but called the Apprenticeship Levy Transfer Scheme.
Yes.
Yeah, so and I think it's worth just touching on that briefly. So for smaller businesses who luckily don't qualify to actually be to pay the apprenticeship levy in full, actually larger organisations are able to transfer a certain percentage of their apprenticeship levy if they don't believe they're going to use it, which can then be transferred into smaller businesses to fund their apprentices. And that again is something that that certainly is quite big down here in the West Midlands, because we've got such a booming SME economy, but also we've got some incredibly large corporate organisations operating in the local area. So having that facility to be able to go, some of the big boys and girls going, right, here's X million pounds of our apprenticeship levy. And somebody like the plumber example that you gave can go, oh, actually, how do I get involved in that apprenticeship levy transfer fund and have that apprenticeship funded for you as well? Is great to get through the whole, as we started the conversation around the cost pressures that are in the economy at the moment.
I think it's interesting. I think it's worth expanding a bit further on that. Now we've started talking about it, but how I ended up teaching at Northumbria University is when I'm teaching innovation, it's actually on a degree apprenticeship program. So the larger employers, a good few years ago, were suddenly looking at the apprenticeship scheme, saying, well, "Hang on a minute, we're paying this levy, but there's nothing out there for our highest, our skilled workforce. It's only for bringing people in at the more junior levels of the organisation." So they were crying out, and that's where we've seen people getting chartership qualifications on a degree apprenticeship program. I think actually that's working really well. There is a huge selection. I had a client recently come to me. They were looking for a degree apprenticeship in architecture. And yeah, we could, become a qualified architect through an apprenticeship scheme. I mean, it's game changing. So huge opportunities, I think, with the transfer, the funding that's there. I think it's a great opportunity to really upskill, and I think that's where resilience comes from. Is knowledge, getting good people, getting loyal people. That's what we need. So if anyone was looking to get some coaching or some advice from you, how would they reach out to you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm Dave Rogers, the Business Explorer on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find. And then you can see all the stuff that I share, online, weekly newsletter that you can sign up to. And you can also check out my website, www.fueledfitandfiredup.com.
Okay. And you've also written a book as well. Tell us very quickly about that.
So wrote a book, Fuel Fit and Fired Up, and it's all about mental, physical, and emotional well-being. It was a personal passion of mine. It was written during lockdown, and as you quite rightly pointed out, I'm not going to retire on the proceeds of it, but it's out there. It's available on Amazon. It gives pretty straightforward, simple, practical tips for, as I describe it, it's a regular book written by a regular bloke for regular people, and just to give us some ideas of how we can improve our health and well-being.
Sounds fantastic. Brilliant. Anyway, thank you so much, Dave, for today. I hope everyone's really enjoyed it, and keep a lookout for maybe some other videos in the future. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
Thanks for listening to the Ask JT podcast. Subscribe for a weekly episode, and if you found this useful, share it with a fellow business owner who might benefit.